Okay guys, so hi, welcome. This is another video from me, Aaron, from astrologybyaaron.com, and today we're going to be looking at King Charles III. So I want to take a look at this chart because I'm sure, as everyone is aware, the news is very hot right now, and so there's a lot going on with the royal family. But in relation to my first video I did about William, and kind of the second video I did about Edward and his abdication, I think similar themes are kind of happening at the moment. Like I said in the Edward video, the same eclipse cycle, the Saros cycle, is connected to the abdication of 1936, is repeating this year again. So yeah, I just wanted to have a little look at King Charles's chart. There's a lot going on. So yeah, we're going to go through some Zodiacal releasing, a lot of progression work, and then a lot of transit work as well. We're also going to look at eclipses. We're going to look at that Leo eclipse like we did in Prince William's chart, which is very important this August. And we are going to look also at the natal promise as well. So we're going to focus on the Saturn in King Charles's chart because that is linked to his profections this year. And yeah, and the natal promise surrounding that Saturn. So, and we're also going to look at primary directions, which is our first port of call. So primary directions is kind of one of our oldest timing techniques in astrology. It involves turning the chart by primary motion and looking at what is interacting with the angles. It's a bit beyond this video to explain what that is in great detail, but it's one of our oldest techniques. So we're going to look at the primary direction of Charles's Jupiter. So I have the chart here. So age 77, that's the age of King Charles right now. So what's happening in this chart is we are having the primary, hang on, let me just get up my app here. Let's get rid of that and that. So this is his primary direction chart. So we have the natal Jupiter here at 29 degrees, and it's coming to conjunct the IC angle. And then we also have Uranus up here, but we're not going to focus on Uranus in primary directions because it's a little complicated with the outer planets, but the ecliptical positioning, there's a little debate about how to use those in primary directions, but we are going to come back to that when it comes to secondary progressions. But yeah, so the natal Jupiter here is coming to the IC. It's also squaring the ascendant as well, so we have kind of double up significations here, so 29 and 29 here. So that's the primary direction. When primary directions, it's bringing the topics of that planet and what it signifies online. It's almost like it's ripening. It's coming to fruition. So in Prince Charles's natal chart, we have his Jupiter here in the 5th house. It's in Sagittarius. It's not of the sect in favor because this is the night chart, because Charles is born at night. The sun is below the horizon. So sect is very important in traditional astrology. His sect light here, up here, is the moon in Taurus. So that Jupiter that's coming to by primary direction, Jupiter signifies children because it rules the 5th house and also rules the 8th house of inheritances and other people's money, to name but a few topics. So what I think it's signifying here is, in accordance with what Prince William's elevation, I feel like this might be a representation of the child, meaning the heir apparent, which is Prince William, coming to a place of significance and power. It's squaring his ascendant and also conjuncting the IC by primary direction. So this is highly significant. This is a once in a lifetime direction. He's also in his later years, Charles, so it's not going to happen again. So yeah, I think that's pretty significant. It's pretty loud. Now those primary directions are happening. Let me just open it up here. They are happening on the 20th of June, and for the square to the ascendant, and then the it'll say opposition here, but it's a conjunction the IC, because the MC and the IC are opposite each other, and that's happening on July 4th, 2026. So we already have like a timeline to work with here. So these primary directions are coming to full force and kind of what ancient astrologers would say their peak. Primary directions, we kind of give a 6 months on either side, so that kind of like a year timeline. So there's this build up, and then there's this peak, and then there's this like flowing away, kind of like aspect work as well. When you have an applying aspect and a separating aspect, it's kind of the same principle. So we're going to keep those dates in mind: June 20th, July 4th, so the middle of 2026. They're very, very important. But yeah, that's the primary directions I wanted to look at. So we'll get rid of that. And we'll go back to the natal chart here. So the next thing I wanted to look at was, we'll go to perfection, or not perfection, sorry, we'll go to progressions next. So let's bring up his progressions. So like I said before, Uranus we don't use in primary directions because of the ecliptic and kind of debate around whether outer planets interact in primary directions, but Ganson would say no. Ganson would say yes, sorry, but that's besides the point. I'm getting a little too technical, a little too Virgo there. So what we're going to look at here is we have the progressed MC coming to meet the 29th degree of his natal Uranus. So that's going to come into effect and start on the 5th of September 2026. And then also that Jupiter is going to meet the progressed IC, because IC and the MC are the same axis, so they move together. So in secondary progressions, we have that Jupiter doubling up there. That's not unusual, because primary directions and secondary progressions are kind of like close cousins in terms of technique. They just use a different key to work out timing. So they're distant cousins in terms of the technique. So that's why that Jupiter is showing up again. But in secondary progressions, we're using that Uranus and that MC angle coming to Uranus. So what does the MC stand for? It's the reputation, it's career, it's the life direction, it's what we're known for, and it's coming towards Uranus. So it's a conjunction. So it's especially potent. The conjunction is the most powerful connection in astrology. So it's saying that topics surrounding the career, the life direction, what we're known for, what we do in the world is going to have an unexpected element come to it. Uranus is about freedom, liberation. It's about surprise, unexpected, instability. So you could say here that instability, surprising events are going to surround King Charles's career and life direction. So to me, this sort of symbolizes perhaps maybe an abdication, or perhaps a transfer of power of some kind. It could signal a shift of perhaps this process of elevating Prince William into a more senior position, in terms of maybe that, one, an abdication takes place, another that Charles passes away, or a third option where she kind of meets in the middle is that there is this kind of shift in duty and responsibility, and a kind of maybe a slower transfer of power, in terms of like this kind of crisis that is facing the monarchy right now, in terms of it kind of being a bit of a bloated institution, and maybe Prince William's kind of views in terms of slimming it down are going to come into force. So there's multiple ways it can play out, but I do think it signifies a great change, and this will kind of be backed up through other techniques we're going to look at. But that primary direction is really important, that Jupiter coming to the IC, being empowered, coming online, something to do with William, his kids, his children, and then this MC in his personal chart coming to Uranus, which is highly significant. His ascendant as well, like we say, primary directions and secondary progressions are close cousins, so they're going to kind of mirror in technique, just the timing will be a little bit different. Just for reference, I use NIBOD in RA in my secondary progressions work, so that can be changed to the settings. I find it to be the most kind of accurate, the one that I've kind of used for a long time. So yeah, that ascendant is coming to square the Uranus as well, and also square the Jupiter. And the descendant, the progressed descendant, is doing the same because the angles move together. So yeah, big activations there. The progressed ascendant will square Uranus on September. It starts on the 6th of May 2026 and lasts until the 14th of October 2027. So it's kind of just over kind of a year and a bit timeline there for that aspect, because what we do is we look at when it enters the whole degree of what it's aspecting in the natal chart, and then when it leaves that whole degree. And then that's how we kind of timeline those secondary progressions. So yeah, I also wanted to look at, he's in a new moon phase here. So the progressed sun is at 10 degrees here, and the progressed moon is at 3 degrees. So it's still in that new moon phase. So the new moon is all about new beginnings. Technically, the moon has very, very little light. So what we would say is this isn't a time of culmination like the full moon, which is present in Prince William's secondary progressions. He has a full moon phase happening. You can see that in the first video I did. So there's kind of a contrast here with King Charles's new moon phase. This isn't a moment of the moon isn't very full, so it's saying that, it's not a very powerful moon. It's just beginning to grow in light. So it's those early stages. It's kind of like there's seeds underneath the ground, but they're not growing on top. They're not even exposed yet. So it's quite, you could argue that it's a period of low vitality, because the moon in general astrology and ancient astrology represents the body and the flux of fortune. So you could say here that fortune is quite low at the minute. There's not much light. It's not that supported. So that could be indicative of kind of a period of time where someone's health isn't perhaps at its best. The vitality is a little bit lower. In personal client work, this would just kind of represent someone who's in a stage where they're just kind of beginning something new, or something that hasn't quite taken shape yet, but it's on the way. It's going there. But we're looking at someone here is 77. So there's not many new beginnings you're kind of working in at 77. There could be certain things, but it's, giving a sense of perhaps lower vitality, a little bit less fortitude in the body, so to speak. And we know like King Charles has had treatment for health concerns, so that would kind of make sense. So in terms of progressions, that kind of was most important thing is like the angles are all activated, which is kind of the point, and the angles are kind of the most sensitive points in our charts. So yeah, that's kind of the overview of progressions. So what I want to go into next is I'm going to go into profections. So profections is another symbolic timing technique like primary directions and secondary progressions. So Prince Charles he's 77, so he's in a 6th house profection year. So he's activating the sign of Capricorn, which activates its ruler, which is Saturn. And also spirit here, the lot of spirit is present in the sign of Capricorn. So yes, 6th house topics are going to be highlighted for he's at the age of 77. So 6th house has a lot to do with health. It's a place of bad fortune in Hellenistic astrology and traditional astrology. It's a place of servants. It's a place of small animals. It's also a place of that kind of laborious work, kind of chop wood, carry water, things we have to do in order to kind of keep moving, and not very perhaps pleasant things, just things that have to be done. What's important about this, the sixth house, is it's verse to the ascendant, so that's why it's typically thought of as a more challenging house, because it doesn't see the ascendant by whole sign. And what's more important here is that Saturn is the out of sect malefic for King Charles. So the out of sect malefic is going to cause a bit more trouble in someone's chart, and the fact that it rules the sixth house of health would indicate that, you know, there's going to be some health challenges here, and they're going to be highlighted in this year. And what we do with perfections is we assess Saturn and what it's doing in the natal chart, and that's kind of the essentially the natal promise. So we're going to do a bit of that now. So Saturn here, like I said, is the malefic out of sect. Saturn is a lot about, it's the father of time. It's about things that take a maturation. It's about delays, restrictions. It can be about inheritance. It can be about death. It can be about it's essentially the planet of necessity. Whenever you have a Saturn transit, it kind of breaks everything down in terms of what do we need going forward, what's the least we need to get forward in this time. So yeah, Saturn for Prince Charles is ruling also the topic of the seventh house. So we could say there in a general sense that, you know, seventh house topics such as relationships, romantic partnerships, spouses, they're going to be perhaps a topic of challenge for Prince Charles. And we can definitely say that, you know, in terms of Diana and kind of Camilla and people like that. We also look to the aspects that Saturn's making. So the moon here, which is the sec-light, is making and applying trine to Mars, or to Saturn, sorry. So the moon is a secondary kind of indicator for career. So that could indicate, you know, speaking to the very long time it took for King Charles to ascend to the throne. The moon also there in Taurus, exalted, is representative of his mother in the 10th house. So that intricately connecting, you know, sect-like topics, which is career, to the planet Saturn, which is a planet that slows things down and takes a very long time to maturate, if that's the right word. I don't know if I just made that word up. Saturn is also is a planet that scrutinizes. It kind of examines things. It's sort of in that sign of Virgo. It's sort of breaking down information there and kind of yeah, it's in a mercurial sign, so it's kind of scrutinizing in its way and kind of maybe heavy in detail. It's present in the second house here, so it's saying something here about finances that, you know, Saturn in the second, you would say perhaps that there's a delay in earning your own income, or there's a blockage of some kind. So now you say, you know, the king's, you know, very wealthy, so where do we get wealth in the chart? Well, we'd look to actually the 8th house here for other people's money, inheritances, money that comes from others in the general sense, and it's very well resourced, that 8th house, because Pisces is on the cusp. So Jupiter rules those topics, and Jupiter's in Sagittarius, its domicile. Also in the 5th house, a good fortune. And Jupiter in the 5th house is generally a very good indicator for wealth. I've always seen it in multiple charts, or if Jupiter's also in the 11th house as well. Saturn is also doing something what's called maltreatment by overcoming. Saturn's in typically what's known as a bad house in astrology. It's a darker house, so it's making a square here to the 5th house. So it's overcoming, it's dominating on the topics of the 5th and also on the planets that are in the 5th. So Mars there rules the MC. So that's another indication of delay to career matters. And then Saturn is also overcoming and maltreating Jupiter, which Jupiter rules the topics of the 5th. So things to do with his children. So hardships, kind of sometimes separations. Saturn tends to separate as well. So you could talk about the Harry story there. What else did I want to say about Saturn? It does make a separating sextile to Mercury, its ruler, which rules Virgo. So it does have some reception, so it does see its ruler, so that's kind of a mitigation. It has a line of sight to the planet that is in charge of it, so it can access the resources that Mercury has to offer. And Mercury's placed there in the 4th house, so it's speaking to money from family again. So kind of in traditional astrology, you sort of see these like doubling up of significations in multiple ways that a delineation kind of plays out. Saturn's also very important because it rules spirit, the law of spirit, and it rules the law of fortune. So when we look at zodiacal releasing, it's going to be very important because spirit and fortune are ruled both by Saturn. So what can we say here about spirit? So Saturn is once again making contact with, or sorry, not once again, but it's trining spirit, and then it's averse, so it can't see the lot of fortune by whole sign aspect. So what we can say here is that Saturn is imposing on the topics of spirit, which is kind of another indicator for vocation and career and life direction. So it's saying here it's having a Saturnian influence on the lot of spirit. So, you know, themes of delay, restriction, blockage. So speaking to Charles's long time coming to the throne. And then it also doesn't aspect fortune. So it's doubling up there on topics of fortune being in the 7th means that a lot of fated circumstances will surround the topics of one-on-one relationships and partnerships. So speaking again there to, you know, marrying someone who wasn't really in love with, but was propped up by, you know, the firm, and kind of, you know, it was the right thing to do in terms of not being able to marry the woman he loved, Camilla. So yeah, a lot of fated circumstances around the topics of relationships. So that's Saturn in the natal chart. And what we're going to do now is go to profections and have a look at Saturn being activated. So Saturn in the 2nd house is, like I said, is a blockage about delays, about finances. But Saturn here, I think, as well, is going to bring maybe, like I said about Saturn scrutinizing, and kind of it tends to clarify things. So Saturn rules the bones, so it tends to get down to the root of things and to the very bare necessities of things. So I feel like Saturn here activating in the 2nd house is saying something about perhaps King Charles's personal resources and what that entails, and basically stuff around his money is going to be important. So yeah, that's profections, and it also activates 6th house topics, so topics of illness, people who work for him. Yeah, so, and everything I said about Saturn and natal promise is going to kind of come into being. One thing I forgot to mention is that moon by the trine of Saturn, the moon rules Cancer. So the 12th house is typically not an easy house either, much like the 6th house. So the moon is applying the topics of the 12th onto Saturn. So it is a trine, so trine's a little bit easier, but the 12th house is not an easy place. So 12th house can be enemies, it can be plots, self-undoing, secrets. So perhaps there is these, you know, there's a lot of scandal going on in this, so there's perhaps secrets coming to the forefront by that Saturn being activated. And we're going to see with transits as well how the Saturn's going to play out over this year and the start of 2027 as well. So we'll leave Saturn for a wee minute, and we're going to go to Zodiacal releasing. So Zodiacal releasing is another great technique. It's a symbolic timing technique. But basically, like I said in the first video, I explained a little bit about fortune. So fortune is in astrology kind of the winds of fate. It's things outside of our control. And then the lot of spirit represents things that are a little bit more of our own volition, a little bit more of our own choosing, kind of what we're known for, our life direction, things like that. So, but the interesting thing in Zodiacal releasing is we have fortune houses. So it's going to get a little bit technical, but it's important to know because it's very relevant and pertinent to the Zodiacal releasing technique. So this is the lot of fortune here. So wherever fortune is placed, it will create within the natal chart fortune houses, and basically fortune houses are just another type of angularity in the natal chart. So what is angularity? Angularity is the first house, the fourth house, the seventh house, and the 10th house. These are places of power, places where wherever planets are placed, they are very operational, they can function well, they can bring about their significations. So what fortune does, and where fortune's placed, it creates another set of angular houses. So funny enough, fortune is placed in one of Charles's angular houses, in the angular seventh. So it makes all his angular houses fortune houses. So there's this doubling up of fortune houses and natal angular houses. So whenever in zodiacal releasing we come to periods, and the easiest way to do that is what quadruplicity fortune is in, what other modality. So it's in Aquarius, so it means all the fixed signs, which are Aquarius, Taurus, Leo, and Scorpio, are going to be fortune houses. And this is where a lot of activity and busyness and heightened activity happen in zodiacal releasing. So that's a lot of information, but I just wanted to lay out there the kind of the bare brass of zodiacal releasing. So on top of that, the most important houses in zodiacal releasing and fortune houses in general are the fortune first and the fortune 10th. So we go down round the zodiacal order. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10th from fortune all the way around. And then this is fortune first. So back to zodiacal releasing. What we do is we release from the lot of fortunes. We have different levels. I'll not go into it. The technique is quite nuanced and varied. But the most important thing here is on level 2, level 1s are bigger shifts, so they're bigger time gaps, and then level 2 are more, they just go down in kind of segments of time. So we are in, we're in a Gemini period on level 1, and we're currently in a fortune first period on level 2, because the sign of Aquarius, which we just said is fortune first for King Charles, is activated. And then we are going to go into we are in a level 3 10th from fortune period, which started on the 2nd of January 2026. So both the fortune first is activated on level 2, and then the fortune 10th is activated on level 3. So this is indicative of, actually no, that's not right. Sorry, that's not what I wanted to point it out. What I wanted to point it out was there's a fortune first period on level 2, and then we're going to have we are going to move into a fortune 10th here on September 2026. So there are the two periods. So we have fortune first level 2, fortune 10th, on level 3. We have a loosening of the bond here in 17th of May 2026, so that's something to look out for. It's happening in the sign of Leo, which is interesting too. It's a loosening and a peak period, so something particular could happen in that time period. But what I wanted to point out is a lot of fortune and a lot of spirit are kind of lining up. So on a lot of spirit, we are going to enter into on the 29th of April 2026. a level 2 10th from fortune period, and then on the 11th September, which is the same date on the lot of fortune, we're going to enter a fortune first. So September for me is like kind of shifting up to be a kind of very instrumental point. Yeah, it's interesting that kind of doubling up there on both spirit and fortune. So yeah, anytime a fortune house is lit up, it's a period of kind of heightened activity, busyness, a lot about external events, things outside of our control. So this is happening both on a lot of spirit and also on a lot of fortune. So it's an intensification of fortune related things. So the flux of fortune, things that are outside of our control. So yeah, that's what I wanted to show on zodiacal releasing. So yeah, that's a lot of technique there, and quite complicated language if people haven't been exposed to zodiacal releasing before. But I hope you're still with me, and we're going to go on to transit work now. Yeah, we've done profections, the R, Neil promise, transits. Yeah, so transits. So the main transit I want to look at first is we have Pluto, which is our furthest planet, so moves the slowest compared to all the other planets. So we have Pluto here at 4 degrees, and his descendant here is at 5 degrees. Now, the 7th house is traditionally known as like the romantic house, but the partner of the spouse. So in his case, it'd be about Camilla. It'd also be about Diana in the past. But the 7th house is also about open enemies. And it's about challenge, because the first house is you, which is over here. And then it's this opposition. So it's the other, it can be the enemy, it can be the public, it can be partners. And there was recently that eclipse there in Aquarius, which coincided with Andrew's arrest. And Aquarius has kind of become known now as kind of the symbol for the people, because the sign of Leo is the king, which his ascendant is in. And the opposite of that is, the people. Now, the moon in the chart also represents the people. The moon is typically known to represent people in ancient astrology, or the masses. But when I was seeing this Pluto transit, which is the first hit's going to be on the 15th of April. It's going to go to 5 degrees, and then it's going to retrograde back. And the second hit's going to be on the 27th of May 2026. And then there's going to be a further 3 hits of that Pluto transit to the Descendant angle in 2027. But those first 2 hits are happening in 2026, and fairly soon. So I just feel this is kind of like indicative of kind of the mood right now of the people, and kind of that open opposition. Like there is definitely like a change in the air. This is far greater than the abdication crisis of 1936. This is, very new territory, and nobody quite knows where it's headed, or what else is going to come out. So I feel that Pluto transit is speaking to quite great oppositional change to King Charles as a person. Pluto is about power. It's about transformation. It's about digging deep into things that you have to go deep on to get to the truth. It's about unearthing things. It's not a comfortable planet. And being on the Descendant, it's on one of the angles of the chart. Is speaking very loud to kind of that Plutonian archetype being very prominent in Charles's life right now. So yeah, I thought that was quite interesting, especially with the eclipse just happening in there, and being opposite King Charles. But we would read it conjunct the Descendant, so it is the other. It is this that Pluto transit is happening to the other. So be that. It could be about Camilla. It could be about oppositional forces, enemies, just that that opposite force. So yeah, I thought that was very, very interesting. Big Pluto transit. So what we're going to look at next, the next thing we're going to look at is Uranus, because Uranus is, there is a Neptune transit. Neptune's and Saturn have just made their conjunction in the ninth house, which is very important. Ninth house speaks to kingship in general. It's kind of where divine right comes from, or what people believe divine right to be. So Saturn-Neptune conjunction happening in his ninth house, which is also where his MC is very important as well. It's showing shifts in beliefs and dissolution of certain boundaries or things, the way things were done. It is going to make a trine. Neptune will make a trine to the ascendant degree as well, but not for a wee while yet. But that Pluto kind of stood out to be a bit more. Yeah, and that Uranus will eventually make a sextile as well to the ascendant when it passes into Gemini, which is important too. The ascendant degree is all about him as a person. It's a very sensitive point. But the next transit I wanted to look at was the Uranus to Saturn. So Uranus will, let me just get it. So transiting Uranus square Saturn. So yeah, we have the square here, the first opening square to that Saturn on the 9th of August 2026. So it's quite significant because, first of all, when we're doing profections, because Saturn is activated as the Time Lord for that year, and all that Saturn has in the natal chart, that is promise, is going to come to the forefront. Any interaction transit-wise to the natal Saturn is going to be very, very important. So that Uranus to Saturn is going to bring, unexpected events, upheaval. Uranus is the great awakener. It kind of is just a disruptor in general. Mars traditionally would be a disruptive planet. But also Uranus is a disruptor. It can be liberation, it could be freedom, it can be all about authenticity, it can be about revolution. It's the planet of revolution. So coming to that Saturn is going to be not an easy transit. It's going to bring, it rules the 7th and the 6th. So it could bring surprises surrounding health. It could bring surprises around people that work for King Charles. So literally his servants, his staff. Also 7th house, it could be Camilla or open enemies. So yeah, and Saturn in general is just about structures and, traditions and, things that have lasted the test of time and things that are old. So just kind of those traditions and structures of King Charles's life, kind of maybe, having this rude awakening. You'll see as well that Saturn is on the MC here degree. It's making its retrograde pass on the MC angle. So that's that's kind of one of the most important transits I've looked at for King Charles. But to keep it on the Uranus first, the Uranus to the square to Saturn, the first pass is going to be on the 9th of August, the second on the 13th of October, and then the final one on the 19th of May 2027. So that's a 3-point transit. So yeah, it's going to be big shakeups for that Saturn, and Saturn being the Lord of the Year, and it'll also be the Lord of the Year when he turns 78 in November. So it'll carry over. That Uranus transit is very activated for both him being 77 and 78. So yeah, the next one I want to look at is the transiting Saturn to the MC. So you can already see it up here, but what I want to do is bring it back to its first pass. So we want to do Saturn conjunct the MC angle. Now the MC, like we said at the start, with that primary, the secondary progression of the secondary progressed MC come to Uranus, which is going to be active for nearly a year and a half. This Saturn is kind of a secondary indicator, you could say. Let me get it back to the first pass. Now, I was doing some research, and so Saturn takes 30 years to go around the zodiac. So every 30 years, you'll have a Saturn conjunct the MC transit. But sometimes transits do like a 3-point pass with their retrogrades. But I was looking back, and Charles has only ever had 2 direct hits of Saturn to his MC. He's never had a 3-point transit. And I checked those years where he did have that Saturn conjunct the MC transit, and he was not in Saturn perfection years. So this is going to be doubly loud for him this year because it's 3 passes, and also it's the activated time lord for the year. So when we're looking at transits, we single it down to what transiting Saturn is doing in that perfection year, and also what's happening to the natal Saturn. So when we looked there about the Uranus square natal Saturn. So yeah, the 3 passes of Saturn are going to be on the 13th of June 2026. The retrograde is going to be on 7th of September 2026, and then the final pass is going to be the 3rd of March 2027. So Saturn to the MC is all about consolidation. It's about a kind of reckoning. Saturn's about responsibility and duty, and sometimes heavy is the crown. It's in the sign of its fall, so it's not a very productive Saturn. It's a very impatient Saturn. It's a pressurized Saturn. Saturn wants to go slow and wants to build. Aries wants to do and wants to just get on with it. So there's these 2 opposing forces. And when it's on top of the MC, to me, that signifies something of perhaps a choice having to be made, having to perhaps reckon with what is the right thing to do in duty, and what King Charles's legacy is going to be about. So this could perhaps be an indication of abdication or stepping down, or some type of transfer of responsibility. I spoke in Prince William's chart about his Saturn coming online and themes of responsibility surrounding that. So I feel like this is just like kind of an echo of those themes. This Saturn transit happens from June into March 2027, with the retrograde on September 2026. So when we looked at the fortune periods and a lot of spirit periods in Zodiacal releasing, it was around the September time that those heightened periods of activity were activated. So it's interesting that, that Uranus is coming to the natal Saturn around this time. Around the October, it'll have its retrograde pass, and then Saturn's going to have its second retrograde pass that September time as well. So September, October is kind of this period of a lot of activity. And then you can see there also Jupiter is on the Descendant as well, so that's pretty loud as well. Yeah, and also Saturn, like in Prince William's chart as well, rules fortune and it rules spirit. So it's also speaking to themes surrounding that, just like it's in the natal chart. So Saturn is a very important planet for King Charles. And what I want to stress here, the difference is in Prince William's chart, he's a day chart. So Saturn is more constructive in the day. But in a nighttime chart, like King Charles's chart, Saturn is more difficult. It's a lot more potentially destructive and doesn't work in favor for the native. So Saturn here is going to be a very challenging. And the fact that it's in a Saturn perfection year, and it's on top of the MC, which is a very sensitive point, is speaking, very, very loud. Also, Mars here is in the 10th house. The 10th house is a place of action and what we're known in the world, what we do, our public efforts. And it's also opposite here the sun. And the sun is the ruler of the ascendant degree for King Charles. So the sun represents King Charles. So yeah, there's a lot going on here with that Saturn transit. But yeah, that was the Saturn transit I wanted to cover. That's probably the most important thing, alongside the ZR and the progressions, as well as the prime directions. So if you're still with me, I've got one more thing to look at. What I wanted to end with is the eclipse. So we had an eclipse there, just in Aquarius. That was pretty significant for the royal family. It happened 2 days before Andrew's arrest. There's going to be another one in Virgo. So let's just have a look at those eclipses. So yeah, that was the one in Aquarius on the 17th of February. And then the lunar eclipse is going to be in Virgo there in the second house. And then the next set of eclipses are going to be, first one's going to be a solar eclipse, which is going to be visible in the UK. And this is very important eclipse because this is the eclipse I talked about in Prince William's chart. So it's happening in the sign of Leo, in the moon and sun there at 20 degrees. And eclipses are all about, well, the moon is coming to block the light of the sun. So on a very basic level, the light of the sun, which gives all life on Earth, it rises in the east and it sets in the west every day. It's that planet of consistency. It never fails us. The sun is coming to block that light. So it's showing this interruption in the natural order. Solar eclipses especially can signify changes in leadership. They were originally used in ancient astrology to signify the fall and change of leaders and kings. They've only kind of recently started to be used in personal and natal horoscopes or astrology. And what's really significant about this eclipse is it's in the sign of Leo. The sign of Leo is naturally about kings. It's where the sun has its domicile. So the sun is strong in the sign of Leo, but the moon is still blocking the sun's light. And even in the animal kingdom, animals are disrupted during eclipses, like nature is disrupted. It is this interruption in the sequence. And the eclipse is happening with the south node. So these are the moon's nodes where eclipses happen, and the south node is generally signifies, it's like a draining quality. It's like an emptying out. So it's not a place of increase or amplification like the north node is, which is over here. The south node is about taking away, decrease, loss. So it's happening in King Charles's first house, which is really significant because the first house is one of the most powerful houses alongside the 10th house. And it's also a fortune house for him as well. So like we say, his angularity is doubly important because of the fortune aspect. So yeah, this Leo eclipse just says to me, yeah, there's a change of leadership or power. That Saturn, like I say, is on top of the MC, and that Uranus is square the Saturn. So there's a lot going on in his chart. It's also square his sun, his natal sun, within 2 degrees. So it's applying. So that's significant too. Yeah, that Leo eclipse is just really, really loud. And with what happened during or after the solar eclipse in Aquarius, I just feel like this eclipse is going to start some type of process or some type of change in leadership, or a stepping down of some kind, or a transfer of power. Yeah, something really significant, I feel. But yeah, that happens on the 12th of August 2026. So it's a little bit before that ZR period. I'm just going to put the 12th of the 8th, 26 for the eclipse. So it's very crude, those numbers. But yes, there's a lot of activation there in King Charles's natal first house. And that eclipse, I feel, alongside William's chart is just, there's something going on there in terms of the royal family and the institution as a whole. Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting to see what plays out, what more comes out. It's a really interesting time. Like I said at the start of the video, this solar eclipse and the eclipses happening this year are all linked to the same Saros cycles. Saros cycle is a bit too much detail to go in here, but basically eclipses repeat. They have families. So this Leo eclipse and the Aquarius eclipses and some of the other ones in the other signs as the nodes are changing this year and next year are all part of the same family that surrounded the abdication of King Edward, specifically this Leo eclipse. I think it's Saros Cycle 136. I might have that wrong, but I think it's 136. So that's very significant too. You know, history, I didn't say this, but someone else would say history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. So there's similar themes coming up here. But that was a very long video, so I'm thankful for those who stayed to the end, and I'm glad for the people who come back and taking a bite size and take their time going through all this material. It's very dense. I hope it was clear. I hope it was helpful, and I hope that you find it informative and useful. That was a very heavy in technique kind of look at someone's natal chart. What I do with clients is something similar, but probably not that level of technicality. I would, have someone facing me and talking to them and hearing about their lives in a kind of more client-focused, client-centered approach. So if you're interested in getting a reading, you can go over to astrologybyaaron.com. I'll put a little comment down in the comments if you ever want to get a reading. But there's also, you can sign up and get, I've done a free PDF on the houses, the ancient meanings of the houses. They're a little different than modern astrology would have you believe. So you can go over to my website and check that out if you like. But I hope you have a great rest of your day, and leave any questions in the comments. I'll be happy to answer. But all the best, guys. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon. Bye.